Well, Arizona is not long for the Pac-12, but they could set themselves up to have some momentum going into the Big 12 next year with this final season in the Pac.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with, let's just call it the former Conference of Champions. I don't even know at this point. We got a loss for words. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, review wherever you listen to or watch this show. Thank you so much for continuing to tune in for however longer this show continues to be around. We'll just kind of have to, wait and see what happens, but I'll keep you informed no matter what. We're talking about Arizona today because as they depart the Pac for the Big 12, we are in a situation in which Arizona is unquestionably a basketball brand. So when you look at what they can bring on the football field, you're going to have to look at what they can do this year. Because you know what the Big 12 would like to have happen? For Arizona to have the best season possible. For Colorado to surprise everybody and win a bowl game. That's what you would like to have happen. Those were your first additions from the Pac-12, the ones that really fortified your league and suffered a crippling blow to the Pac and whatnot and all that sort of stuff and everything that's transpired since then. Yeah, Arizona has a chance, by the way. I've talked about them as a pop team this year. They went from 1 win to 5 wins to what are they going to have this year? What are they going to be? What can they do? I think they can do quite a bit. I'm going to tell you something later in the show, a prediction that barring a massive change or a big injury somewhere in information that I currently have, I am going to stand by. I am going to stand by this prediction. That'll come later in the show once they get to their schedule. But I think when you look at Arizona from a football standpoint, they have an easier path to getting to the top of the Big 12 than they do in the Pac-12. I absolutely believe that. And I think when you look at, the top teams they would have been facing, I think getting over Oregon, Washington, Utah is not as challenging as, you have more teams that you're trying to get by in the Big 12, but you don't have the dominant team. Like, who's the dominant team without Oklahoma and Texas in the Big 12? Who is it? There isn't one. I think it's going to be a league of tremendous parity and have tremendous depth as well. And because of that, I feel like Arizona is positioned to be able to make a splash over there, but they can do that in a big way if they carry over momentum from this season. But they continue to recruit very well. I don't expect that to go anywhere. And if they can put together the sorts of defenses they need to just be good enough, Jedd Fisch, I think he knows what he's doing. Arizona seems to have made the right hire here. So let's get into my favorite part of this show in the 2 years that I've been hosting it. Well, really year and a half, but the 2 seasons that I've been hosting this show. These are my favorite shows to do. Record predictions. Because later in the year, they can be used to absolutely flame me. That happened a season ago. And when I get things absolutely perfectly right, I hear crickets from all of you angry keyboard warriors out there. And that's my favorite noise. Crickets from the keyboard warriors. That's when I know I've predicted something correctly. And you know what? It's okay. I'm good either way. I understand it's how the internet works. Let's set myself up here for what could be a, hey, it's a freezing cold take, or, boy, you were scorching hot. You were absolutely positively scorching hot. So Arizona opens the season at home September 2nd against Northern Arizona. That's an FCS opponent. Once upon a time, Northern Arizona went into Tucson and beat the Wildcats. Pretty sure the game was played in Tucson. But regardless, that's not happening again. This is a new Arizona team. It's not taking place. So Arizona will start 1-0. Then they go to Starkville. Game on SEC Network, on the road. And look, Mississippi State controlled large swaths of the game last year. Arizona hung around. I think put up a more than respectable fight en route to a 5-7 season. I think it was one of their better losses, frankly, because they put up a respectable effort. Have they improved enough to contend with Mississippi State? Here's where I am on this game. If it were in Tucson again, I would be picking Arizona. But because it's on the road, I will go with the Bulldogs. I think that playing in Starkville in week 2, now they don't have Mike Leach dialing up their offense anymore, RIP to the late Mike Leach, but I still feel that Mississippi State, it felt last year that they had a roster advantage in a number of key positions. I still think they're going to have that. I know everybody hates SEC bias, but it's kind of a real thing in more than one way. And I think Arizona's made a lot of strides. I think they are a better team than they were a year ago. I think their roster is better. I think their defense is a lot better than what they were, which was a 5-7 football team last year. I think they're going to be able to score a lot of points, but I still don't know if on the road they're going to be able to go in there and pull off this game. Now, ESPN's Football Power Index doesn't like their chances either. 77% chance they think the Bulldogs pull it out. So not impossible. Arizona has won games with longer odds, and I think will win a game with odds that are longer than that this season. Stay tuned for that take. I keep setting it up, and I'm telling you it's on there. It's going to be on my record predictions. I'm putting it on the record right here and now. I will be doing it. So anyway, I don't think they go and win on the road. If it were at Tucson, I'd like their chances more. I think they hang around. I think they make it close. I think they put up a good effort, but ultimately, I think they come up a little bit short. So 1-1 will be their record there. Then they come back home. They play UTEP out of Conference USA. I think they're still Conference USA. There's been a lot of movement there with the American and Conference, but regardless, in Tucson, I think they're going to be just fine. Then conference play begins, and this is where it starts to get fun. 3 of their first 4 conference games are on the road. That's not ideal. That's not ideal. You know what it does mean, though? That 3 of their last 5 are at home. And one of those is at Arizona State, who I think they're a much better football team than going into this year. Could set up pretty well. I think there are going to be some ebbs and flows here. So I think they beat UTEP 2-1. They start at Stanford on the farm, September 23rd in Palo Alto. I don't think Stanford's going to be a great team this year. Could I see Arizona slipping up here? I mean, sure. It's possible. But do I think that it's likely? No. No, I do not. I expect Arizona to be favored in this game. Maybe not by as much as they should be. But when I look at Arizona's offense and their quarterback situation, I compare that to Stanford's offense and their quarterback situation, I'm going with the Wildcats there. You got better weapons. You got a more coherent offense. You have a third-year head coach versus a first-year head coach. You have Power 5 transfers who are going to make you better on defense. Stanford does not. They've lost a bunch of starters. I think the Cardinal are a 2-10, 3-9 at best football team this year. But I'm fairly certain I'm going to predict them to go 2-10. I could see them going winless in conference. They might not. They might squeak out a win somewhere. But I don't think they're going to win more than one Power 5 game this year. They've got 9 Pac-12 opponents and then Notre Dame. And I don't think Arizona is the team that they're going to get, even though it's at home. So I like Arizona to win that game. Now, the next week, that's when things start to get interesting. That's when things start to get, dare I say, challenging and decisive for Arizona. You can make a decisive decision by going to LinkedIn Jobs because these days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. You want to be 100% certain that you have access to the best qualified candidates available. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Go create a free job post in minutes. Add the purple hashtag hiring frame to your LinkedIn profile to spread the word that you're hiring. Simple tools like screening questions make it easy to focus on candidates with just the right skills and experience so you can quickly prioritize who you'd like to interview and hire. It's why small businesses rate LinkedIn Jobs number 1. That's numero uno for my Spanish-speaking friends out there in delivering quality hires versus leading competitors. LinkedIn Jobs helps you find the qualified candidates you want to talk to faster. That simple. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That's linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Boy, that was less a second segment sip, more a second segment gulp there. But man, does it ever make me feel good every single time. So things get interesting for Arizona because after they play Stanford, at a time in which I think they will be a 3-1 football team and feeling good, then they have a couple of tough back-to-back games. They host Washington, then they go at USC. I think they will lose to USC. Spencer, why'd you skip over the Washington game? Wait. What are you saying? I'm saying that last year, that game in Seattle was a lot closer than it should have been. I'm also saying that last year, Washington stumbled in the desert against a much worse Arizona State team. I am, however, also saying that I think Washington's a good football team, and though I think they will have multiple losses in Pac-12 play, the Huskies, I don't think that's one of them. So I think that's going to be a stretch of 2 straight losses for the Wildcats, and they will fall back to 3-2. But remember, that doesn't mean that things are going, or rather fall back to 3-3. That doesn't mean I think that everything's going to be a disaster. It's a long season, not as long as we'd like it to be, perhaps, sometimes, because it goes by so quickly. But for Arizona, I urge Wildcat fans to be patient here. You're still in a rebuilding mode. Still trying to work to get, you're not a conference contender this year. You know what Arizona's goal is? To be bowl eligible. They don't have to win those games to be there. You would like to see them be competitive like they were with Washington a year ago. You'd like to see them put up a fight. But can you expect them to win either of those games? No. No, I don't think you can. Now, here's where Arizona fans might get really upset with me. I think they're going to lose their next game as well. I think they are going to lose at Washington State. Now, does that mean everything is terrible? No. Again, it does not. This is a tough stretch. You have the Stanford game. That's a more winnable one. But then to go Washington and then at USC and at Washington State. Washington State's a middle-of-the-road team. Washington and USC are a pair of contenders. And you have 2 of those 3 games on the road, including back-to-back. That's not ideal. It's not what you would like to have. I think it is an unfortunate break for the Wildcats. But I think if their schedule worked out a little bit easier, they would have a higher win total. But fear not, because I do think they're getting to a bowl game this year. Just wait. You just wait. So, they will be sitting there as a 3-4 football team with 5 games left. Spencer, you think they're going to win 3 of those games? I do. Which games might those be? Well, why don't we find out? So the next week, they come home and they face Oregon State. Yeah, what do you think of Oregon State going into this year? I think there's some questions. You know what else I think? That Oregon State's been a very good, dominant home team over the last couple of years. And they've been a little iffy on the road at times. They've had stretches on the road. Did you know that last year Oregon State, a 10-3 team, 6-3 in conference play, that beat Oregon in the final week of the regular season, that should have and very nearly beat USC that went 11-1. That team that brings back a lot of key components, lost some key players from that unit as well, particularly on the defensive side of the ball. They probably have the best offensive line in the Pac-12. They've upgraded their quarterback position with DJ Uiagalelei. But did you know that team last year that won 10 games in Corvallis for the first time since 2006. Did you know, any of you listening to or watching this right now, that they needed a miracle play to beat a 3-9 Stanford team on the road? Yeah, that's right. That's a thing that happened. And that's why, coming off 3 straight losses and coming back home, I'm taking the Wildcats. I am taking the Wildcats to knock off the Beavs there. I think Oregon State will have a road stumble this year. History would tell you it's going to be the case. I think Oregon State's a good football team, but I don't think Arizona's a bad one. I do not think Arizona is a bad football team there. Now, Oregon State's going to be favored in all likelihood, but I'm taking the Wildcats, and that's not even the biggest upset I think they pull this year. Again, this is going to be a very, very rocky season, I think. I think that gets Arizona back to 4-4. They're at home again the next week as well against UCLA. That's a Chip Kelly team with not a ton of returners, but some. Not a lot, though. That's a Chip Kelly team that's going to be able to put up points. That's a Chip Kelly team that, led by their head coach, is going to be out for revenge after what happened last year. And I do think they're going to get it. But then, I think the Wildcats get hot. So, 4-4 after the Oregon State game. 4-5 after UCLA. Do I think they're going to win at least 2 more games? Yeah. Yeah, I do. But again, I haven't gotten to the shocking part yet. I have not. I have not told you the surprise that I firmly believe. And am I being perhaps a touch bold in picking them to beat Oregon State and one other perceived contender? Perhaps. Anybody who'd picked Arizona State to beat Washington a year ago, they would have been too bold. But guess what? They would have been right. And maybe it's something about the Big 12 momentum. Maybe it's something about the way the Wildcats have gone about this the right way, recruiting well, and Jed Fish is doing a lot of good stuff. I don't know what it is, but I seem to have an affinity for Cal and Arizona in a way that I can't fully explain. And yet Arizona, I think, is going to win each of their last 3 games of the regular season. Spencer, who do they play? They play at Colorado. Arizona's a better football team. They were last year. Colorado's improved. It'll be tougher in Boulder, but I think Arizona can go in there and get that done. Last week of the regular season at Arizona State, I think the Wildcats are a better football team. Third-year head coach, first-year head coach. Quarterback question, quarterback certainty. Better roster, not better roster. I think the Wildcats have got that. But my big surprise this year, the game there's a game every year that nobody expects. Oregon at Arizona State, 2019. They were unbeaten in conference play. Boom. They lose to, a 4-4, I think it was, Arizona State team. They were pretty average. It was like 4-5, 5-4. They were an average team. They went down to Tempe. They lost. Arizona State last year, 3-9 by the time the year came to end. Who was one of those victories against? Oh, yeah, that's right. It was against Washington, an 11-2 football team. It's the Pac-12 circle of suck. We still have one more year of it. The circle of suck will be completed, for it as it has been foretold by our forefathers and Thor's forefathers before him and Odin and everybody. So yeah, I'm going to seem really crazy here, but I think Arizona carries a bunch of momentum into bowl season this year. I think they beat Colorado, and I think they beat Utah at home, and then they go for the duel in the desert, and they take care of the Sun Devils once again. That's what I see this year. Now, Spencer, you may be asking yourself, how on earth can you look into this camera, talk into that microphone, and say Arizona is going to beat Utah this year? I won't say it's simple or easy. I'm just sitting here and telling you it's possible. First of all, do I need to remind you that this is an Arizona team that a year ago beat UCLA as a 20-point underdog? I'm not ashamed to admit that I thought UCLA was going to cover in that game. They still had a lot on the line. Pac-12 title hopes, playing with momentum going into the game against USC. They still had things. It might have been after I don't even remember at this point, but I'm pretty sure it was before the USC game. That was something I thought would happen. Not only did UCLA not cover the 19.5 point spread, they lost the game outright. And that was the moment where I looked at Arizona and said, they got something. They've got a coach, they've got a culture, they've got a belief, and they're starting to put together a roster. And I tell you right now, Arizona is a better roster than they were a year ago. Go look at the transfers that they've brought in. Those are going to be key contributors on the defensive side of the ball. Now, they lost a couple big ones as well. Dorian Singer offensively, Christian Roland Wallace on the defensive side of the ball. All's fair. But every year, a contender gets upset. Last year, we had it happen twice. Twice. And it came from the desert schools both times. They've had a propensity to do this on more than one occasion. So I am going to pick as my big upset of the year. Oregon State, that win is an upset. It's not the upset Arizona pulls this year. It's an upset. And I think they go to Tucson after having been in Boulder. They'll be coming off a win. They'll be riding high. And they will play in front of their home fans. They'll play the two-time defending champs. And I think they'll knock them off. I think they're going to do it. And here's 2 reasons why that can happen. First reason, a great way to pull an upset is to be able to score points. Did Arizona State hold Washington's offense to 20 points last year? Nope. Arizona pushed Washington a year ago. How'd they do it? They scored a bunch of points, 39 of them to be exact. That is always a formula to make teams uncomfortable, to push the envelope, to make them uneasy. And I look at Montana Lamonius Craig coming in alongside T-Mac and Jacob Cowing with Delora at the helm. I think their offensive line is solid. I think they can run the ball enough. If their defense is able to take a step forward, that's my big question for Arizona. Can their defense take a step forward from what it was a year ago? Then they can be a much improved football team. And Utah at that point in the season, here's one reason that I'm high on the Utes over the course of the year. I think they're just going to stumble. I think it is going to be a classic trap game. They're going to overlook Arizona because they took care of them in Salt Lake City a year ago. They're going to go down to the desert where many of Pac schools in years past have left ghosts on the field that haunt them to this day. As an Oregon fan, I can tell you, we are still haunted by what happened in 2019 in Tempe or what happened in 2013 in Tucson when Oregon was really good with Marcus Mariota and inexplicably the Wildcats blew them out. Well, Arizona's a better football team then than they were a couple of years ago, but you understand what I'm saying. That sort of stuff has been known to happen. So I've got the desert component, Arizona can score, and you know what? It's going to be late in the year. I don't know what Cam Rising's health situation is going to be because I don't really know fully what it is. He's expected to be able to go week 1 against Florida, and I hope he is. I hope he's able to play the whole season 100%, but you got to be realistic about this stuff. By the end of the year, he'll have taken hits. He could be banged up. There is a good chance that Cam Rising in that game, at the very least, isn't 100%. And heck, that might have to be a game he misses. Like the odds, I don't think Vegas has them right now. Vegas is crazy, so they set odds for all sorts of stuff. But I don't think they have odds for what for Cam Rising playing all 9 conference games this year. I don't know what those odds are. I don't think they would be minus 700 for he plays all 9. I think it'd be closer to minus 200 or minus 150. So I think when you factor all that in, that I have questions about Cam Rising's health, and I don't know what it'll be going into that game. Arizona can score points. Crazy stuff happens in the desert, and I think Arizona is a much improved football team. That is my big upset of the year. Wildcats over the Utes, Week 12, November 18th in Tucson. And I think Arizona ends the year 7-5 on a W3, gets back to a bowl game, and takes all that momentum with them into the Big 12, which I'm not a fan of, but you know what? That's the way the world is. And the Pac-12, I could talk ad nauseum about the decisions that got us here, but that's where we're at. So, surprises from the schedule that I have Arizona beating Utah and Oregon State while also losing to Washington State and UCLA. I don't know. Kind of feels appropriate to me. Let me know what you think in the comment section or hit me up on Twitter. Remember, I am not live recording shows right now, doing this well ahead of time because I am on vacation, so to speak, and the internet's, just okay and such where I am at. But hit me up on Twitter or in the YouTube comments anytime at Smalls_55 or at LO_Pac-12 are the handles. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time, and until then, have a wonderful rest of your day.